episode of T Watches the Scary Movie, and we're here back again talking another episode of Killer Camp. That's right, last week we got done talking about Season 2, Episode 3, Killer Tan. We were left with one camper going off into the woods, left to be killed by Bruce after a brutal vote at the nightly campfire. Well, this week we are talking Episode 4, Murder on the Dance Floor, and let's get right to it. The camper that was voted into the woods at the end of Episode 3 last week was Lexi. Lexi ended up getting voted out over Clyde and ended up having to take a stroll into the woods where she found, of all things, a nice little day spa in the middle of Bruce's woods. But unfortunately, when she went to go and enjoy the tanning, the spray tan machine, Bruce decided to replace the tanner with acid and Lexi was burnt to death. Gruesome, but still one of the absolute best things about this show. I love the fact that Killer Camp can distinguish itself from all the other reality competition shows that are out there, because we know that what we're really waiting for is the elimination at the end of the episode to see what the team put together for that kill. It's fantastic. It's a great twist on the reality competition type of format that's out there right now. I just love it. I love this show so much. And Lexi, unfortunately, after drawing a lot of suspicion on last week's episode in the love triangle with herself, Clyde, and Valentina, ended up getting the short end of the stick and was killed off in last week's episode. So, rightfully so, this week's episode started off with Clyde and Valentina and Clyde's best friend, Gabe, his BFF, feeling immense regret over Lexi being sent off to her death. And I get it. It's hard. It's hard for these group of campers right now, because the thing is that unlike other reality shows to where we're going to have a bit of a longer season, as a person who watches MTV's The Challenge for the last 20 years, usually we're going to get somewhere around 12 to 20 episodes. And it's always varied season to season, because sometimes they've really wanted to draw it out and make it much, much longer. But we know in this case, in this specific case with Killer Camp, we're not going to get that much time. So it's that much more vital for these guys to build those relationships and make sure they're figuring their trust out quicker than later at that point. And the fact that Gabe, Clyde, and Valentina, presumably that none of them are the killer, we're feeling so much regret over Lexi being sent off, just shows how close these guys are getting. And then it went a bit further, because after Gabe, Clyde, and Valentina were having this conversation, there was a bit of a camp quarrel, because newcomer Kaylee, who just arrived last week, kind of mentioned, she made some kind of off the beat comments there that it's going to happen to all of us at one point or another. If we don't figure out who the killer is, it's going to happen to all of us. There's no point getting upset. And that really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, especially Valentina and Gabe, who Gabe being himself. And I love it, because again, Gabe is, I mentioned Clyde a lot last week and how Clyde's playing it's almost like he's doing Scream 2, basically, to where he's the boyfriend, but he's being set up for it. It's hard to tell whether he might actually be the killer or not. But Gabe is just leaning into it at this point there, and I love it so much, because Gabe, again, just admits, I'm a douchebag. I'm an asshole. That's who I am, and that's what you're going to get if I don't like what's being said. Now, of course, Gabe and Kaylee made up the next day. Kaylee making sure to mention that she doesn't actually forgive him at that point and just doing it to kind of quiet things down. But a lot of the campers weren't too happy with Kaylee's comments on it. And here's the thing. We get it, because I'm very practical myself. Hey, if we don't figure out who the killer is, all of us are going to be in the same exact situation that Lexi was as well, too. But that's not really how you get into the show, because as they pointed out, you're still relatively new jumping in. You just came in last week, and granted, we're only 4 episodes in at this point here, but still, they've had time to build those relationships and those friendships where Kaylee hasn't. So, all that's going to do is put more eyes on Kaylee for the things she's saying. Maybe there's a killer vibe coming off. We don't know. But let's get to game number 1. Game number 1 was the cash game this time around, and they played Release the Quacken. Now, Bobby Mayer, camp counselor, reminded us that the campers at this point have earned $4,945 to the killer's $5,560. So the killer is still edging out our campers right now. They got to do much better at these games so they can make a little bit more money and not let the killer continue to stack up that bank account. Remember, the campers did not successfully win in season 1. They all unfortunately lost, and Carl turned out to be the killer who walked away with the money at that point. Now, Release the Quack, and the way it worked out there is that campers would be paired up in teams of 2. They'd have to get on a paddleboard, and their point was to go out onto the lake, to go to where they had this pool of ducks in the middle of the lake, and they had to fish out as many ducks as they could in the time that they had to win an allotment of cash. Now, they had a bit of a water obstacle course after they got the ducks as well too, and here were the pairings. There was $4,250 up for grabs in Release the Quacken. We had Lindy and Gabe, we had Clyde and Jada, we had Bella and SJ, Valentina and Kaylee, and Syra and Mora. Now, some of the teams did really, really good, while other teams just couldn't really put it together. Our overall winners were, surprisingly, Valentina and Kaylee, who ended up bringing in $875 to the camp. Now, Lindy and Gabe also managed to pull in $765 to the campers as well, too. And Bella and SJ pulled in $250 as well. But unfortunately, Clyde and Jada and Syra and Mora could not pull anything out at all. There was no money to be made. With that come into play later on in the episode when it came time for somebody to go meet Bruce out in the woods. But, surprise, surprise, as I said, one of the people who didn't pull in any money was Mora. And if you remember, I've been saying it since episode 1. Of course, my original 2 guesses were Mora and Basil. Basil died out there, so Mora's still left. And who didn't make any money this time around? Mora didn't make a dime. So the campers unfortunately only earned $1,890, where the killer made a whopping $2,360 off of this. So the killer is still stacking up the cash right now. Then came the time for the campers to start discussing who they really think was playing sincerely. And SJ, Mora, Lindy, and Jada discussed how Clyde's strategy of Clyde and Jada not standing up, just sitting down on the paddleboard was a bit suspect, because the way Jada puts it is she had a different strategy she wanted to try, but Clyde didn't really seem too receptive to that. And it's interesting, because in their confessional during the game of Release the Quacken, Jada very much pointed out that Clyde is a great strategist and she's good at following directions. And it's like, well, why call him out afterwards? Because you absolutely said in your confessional, to Clyde's face, by the way, that he's great at strategy. So going afterwards and telling the other campers that Clyde wouldn't listen to your strategy at all kind of goes against that there. And that is the first time that I've really started to suspect that Jada might possibly be the killer. Because again, while Clyde does seem very guilty in this season so far, it just seems incredibly weird that Jada, again, is going to go along with it, say she's cool with it, and then call Clyde out after the fact. Something about that seems suspect. But that didn't last for long with that group, as then SJ, Mora, Lindy, and Jada went over to start talking about Syra and Mora herself, who might be in it as well too. And Mora found herself getting upset at the accusations. Now, it's interesting because, you know, there was a call out from Valentina about crocodile tears and about how none of it's realistic there. And Mora getting upset because, you know, Mora's really like built a friendship with these people, and the fact that they think that she could be the killer really upset her. But here's the thing. You can't take that personally, because that is literally the name of the game here. Somebody's got to get accused of it. Somebody's got to be the one who's potentially the killer at this point. Hell, there may be killers in this season, as we found out last season as well too. So we don't know, and Mora can't take it personally. But I did like the fact, and I for multiple reasons, I love the fact that Kaylee pointed out to Mora, though, that just because we're accusing you doesn't mean we don't like you. Because Kaylee, again, is very clearly approaching all of this from, well, yeah, we're in a reality show, but at the same time, like, it's a game. Like, it's literally a competition. You have to think logically here. It's not personal. We just have to accuse somebody, and right now, there are facts that are pointing towards Mora as being the killer. So, Kaylee, that's what I'm talking about, girl. Back me up on this one here, because the evidence is starting to pile up more and more that Mora's not really doing much here to save herself. So I'm about it, Kaylee. That's right. Sell that kill right there. So we move on to this week's immunity challenge, Spear and Loathing, where the campers were going to take a spear and they had to toss that spear into a giant photo of their fellow campers. Basically, each camper would go one by one, tossing a spear, and whoever was left at the end of the game would earn immunity and get to choose one other camper to share immunity with them as well, too. Now, what I love about these immunity challenges as well is that there's basically no rebuttal. You're going to play, and that's it. We already know you don't have it, you don't have it, you don't have it, you don't have it. It's literally a game of chance at this point, because depending on the order of the campers, especially in Spear and Loathing, it was going to be very quick to know who was getting immunity. And a lot of this really started coming down to being around SJ and Valentina, because basically the challenge was set up to stir the pot, to cause animosity, to tell people to specifically pick somebody that they didn't want to have immunity. And another of the campers were saying things like, well, you don't need immunity. Like, you don't need this right now, so I'm going to choose you because no one's going to vote for you. And it's very clear the campers didn't know whether or not that they might be voting tonight for who goes into the woods, or if the killer got to make that choice. Because remember, it fluctuates on this show here. Sometimes the campers get to vote and that person gets sent into the woods. But sometimes the killer is just going to pick two of the campers randomly and they're going in. So the idea of somebody doesn't need immunity, they're not in trouble tonight, is interesting because nobody knew. So the people saying that, very, very, very suspect. But ultimately, it came down to two campers vying for immunity. SJ and Valentina. Now, Valentina made it very clear she already had a pact for immunity with somebody else, and she wasn't going to break that trust for somebody to save herself, which makes Valentina like really, really cool about that. Because if you think about all the other reality shows that like some of you might watch out there, how often do people break their word when they're told point blank they will get immunity? And what was interesting, Mora and Bella were the last two throwers here to make these choices. And Mora obviously wanted, who's had a lot of suspicion on her, was trying to figure out which of the two would do better for her. SJ directly promised her immunity. Now, does he have to hold up his end of the bargain? Absolutely not. And maybe that's what Mora was possibly thinking. But SJ promised Mora if she chose to save him, he would save her. Where Valentina told Mora straight up, don't choose me, because if you do, I can't save you. I have a pact with somebody else right now. I'm going to honor that pact. And I love it. I absolutely love it, because Valentina said it not once, but said it twice. As when Mora took her throw, she missed. She missed SJ. She couldn't save SJ. And everybody even called out the fact that he just told you he would save you. Why on earth would you not return that favor at that point? There's something off about that. So, Mora missed her throw. It came down to Bella. Bella had to figure somebody. And I assume if Bella misses her throw, that at that point, both SJ and Valentina get immunity, because they're the only two who are left. And Bella asked the same thing. Who was going to ultimately save her if she saved them? SJ again made the same promise he offered Mora, which it didn't matter at this point because, again, Mora chose not to take him up on that. And Valentina told Bella, I'm not going to save you because I already have an agreement with somebody else. Bella then decided to save SJ, and SJ earned immunity and again held up his end of the bargain and chose to save Bella. Now, the immunity challenge was just very, very interesting, with a lot of the barbs being thrown around. Because again, I feel the immunity challenges so far haven't really helped towards figuring out who the killer is. Like, I think the money games have done that a lot more, and a lot of the conversations at the camp have led more to like, okay, there's more hinting towards this person versus this person. But like the immunity challenges, everybody seems suspect. So I feel it's hard to zero in on who it could be because, for example, some people pointed out the fact that, well, it's weird the way that Bella chose to play the game because, again, she wasn't up for elimination at all. So by choosing SJ to save SJ in the immunity challenge, which in turn saved herself, something about that seems suspect, especially like to Valentina, because as Valentina said, she didn't need the immunity at all. Either way, after the immunity challenge was done, lovers Clyde and Valentina lamented over knowing one of them was likely going to be dying off tonight, and basically making sure that they left on good terms because they were very positive that one of, or possibly the both of them, could be going into the woods with Camp Killer Bruce tonight. But what was even more interesting then was that we shifted gears over to taking a look at Lindy and Gabe, who are apparently into each other. There's apparently some kind of relationship going there, and there's been some flirting. Now, again, I watched episodes 1 and 2 so long ago because those aired last year. I swear I thought Lindy had mentioned something about having a boyfriend or whatever like that, but who cares? There apparently is some budding romance between her and Gabe. And if that ain't the most horror shit movie in the world, because like Lindy was presented as, and as she even says, like this like rocker chick who's not really doing the same thing as like a lot of the other girls that are there who are like your typical like reality show girls. And I don't mean that in a negative way there, but like Lindy was very much kind of like set aside from the rest of the girls who are featured on this season of the show. And the fact that Gabe is like this big bro who's like an asshole and a douchebag and everything, and the two of them are connecting, that is horror movie shit like crazy, man. Like, it reminds me of The Faculty, because y'all know how much I love The Faculty. And we get Sean Hattasey's character, Stan, who is into Stokely, played by Clay Duvall, and like they're from two opposite sides of the tracks, but they're into each other. And I got big vibes off of that watching Lindy and Gabe. So that was very cool. That was very, very cool to see that happening. So we get to tonight's campfire, and unfortunately, the campers then found out they would not be making the vote tonight. That unfortunately, the camp killer got to decide who was going out into the woods to attend the famed dance recital that, of course, you don't want to miss here at camp. And unfortunately, the killer chose Gabe and Valentina to go out into the woods tonight. It's an interesting choice because we know Valentina has been on the chopping block for the last few weeks at this point. With episode 2, with the love triangle with her and Lexi and Clyde, you know, she was very close. She was very, very close to going home at episode 2. Episode 3, she managed to get the suspicion somehow off of her and everything went over to Lexi, but it looks like everything finally came back around to Valentina. So we should have known that was likely for her, like to go in with Gabe, just due to the fact that there's been so much drama surrounding her at camp this season. And while we won't be talking on this episode about who ended up getting killed off tonight in a gruesome dance recital in the middle of the woods by Bruce, Bobby then revealed to the campers that next week's episode, 2 campers are getting killed off. So the stakes are getting raised immediately here on Killer Camp. Now, what I will say is that this show just continues to get more and more enjoyable. And I think especially for those people out there who don't really enjoy reality competition shows, this is really something that a lot of folks really should take a second look at and really try to get in. Because I feel that even though it's an hour, like most other reality shows are, we're not getting much in that hour. Like, it's actually a very, very much streamlined show. And because it's such a short season compared to other shows like The Challenge, like Survivor, like Big Brother, because it's such a shorter season, I feel that the way the show is edited is really giving us those great storylines quicker and much better than the way they've been presented in the past. I think this is an easy show for a lot of people who only watch watch reality shows in passing, I think this is a great way for these people to really get into reality competition TV shows. I just love it so much. Again, I don't want it to stay on the CW though. When this season is over, please Shudder, please Screenbox, somebody else pick this show up so it can get the eyes on it that it deserves, because we don't really have horror reality shows out there, and this show is perfect for somebody like me and somebody like you. If you're watching this, obviously this is the show that you really should be watching. So who do I think is biting it between Gabe and Valentina? Who do I think is going off here and won't be returning to us next episode? It's hard to say. It's hard to say because it's up to what the killer is doing. And keep in mind that if we're talking about the killer's motives here, whoever they're killing could either be somebody that's getting too close to figuring out who they are, or they could be killing somebody to throw suspicion off of themselves as well too. Now, what I would say is that I would think that you'd want to kill off Valentina. That would be my guess here, is that you'd want to kill Valentina if you're the killer. Because here's the thing. If Gabe comes back, if Gabe is the one that comes back there, it's kind of to be suspected because Gabe very much has eyes on him. Valentina doesn't have any eyes on her at all. And I feel that it would make the most sense for the killer to kill Valentina, because then eyes go to Gabe at that point. Like, is Gabe the killer? Did Gabe send himself in there with Valentina? Is Valentina the killer? Did she send herself in there with Gabe to take suspicion off herself? We don't know. We have no idea on this episode, at least here. But if I was the killer, I think I'd want to go for Valentina, because there'd be more eyes on Gabe coming back, because there's been some suspicion about his motives at camp and the way he's treated a lot of his fellow campers. So who's to say what's going to happen? But if I had to bet right now, my money would be that Valentina's not coming back to the camp bonfire later tonight. But we'll find that out soon. We're going to find that out very, very soon, because episode 5 is already up. So, folks, let me know in the comments, if you are watching Killer Camp, who do you think right now is the killer? Who are your top 2 choices? Because right now, I'm still sticking with Maura. Maura is my number 1 in camp right now. And I don't know, last week I mentioned Syra a lot. That the way she flip-flopped between Clyde and Lexi, which ultimately resulted, in my opinion, in Lexi getting killed, and Lexi wasn't the killer, Syra seemed very, very sus. So, Maura's my number 1. Syra might be my number 2 right now. Syra might have shifted into my number 2. So I want to hear in the comments, who do you think is the killer right now? And I also want to know, do you think the campers are actually going to win the money this time around? Remember, season 1, they did not win. They did not figure out who the killer was. So what do you think, guys? Do you think that our campers can figure it out this season? Let me know in the comments, and stay tuned, because, folks, we're going to be back here with another episode of Killer Camp. Hey everybody, I appreciate you checking out this video, whether it was a review, whether it was a new episode, whether it was an unboxing, an interview, or whatever else. I want to remind you, you can check out my separate reviews also on my YouTube page, and new full episodes go up every Wednesday night on YouTube at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and on your favorite podcasting platforms at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like and share. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.